K-Fob Bell word. First section tells you to write equations in slope-intercept form. Again, just like yesterday, uh, you need two things for slope-intercept form. You need a slope first thing, and you need an intercept, more specifically a y-intercept second thing. As you're given the information for numbers 1 and 2, you don't have a slope or an intercept. That's what we did yesterday. We actually made it to where you had to find both of those things. You do, however, have enough information to find both of those things based on 2 points. If you use the slope formula, the slope formula is your change of y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over your change of x sub 2 minus x sub 1. In order to use that formula, all you need to do is label all your points, x and y. We know that x comes before y in both of them, and we'll call this point 1 and this point 2 just because it comes first. It doesn't matter which one you call which, as long as that both of the numbers are the same. Y sub 2, as we have it written, is negative 2, minus, since it's talking about the change, y sub 1 is 1, over x sub 2, as we have it written, is 2, minus x sub 1 is a negative 3. That's where people kind of mess up this right here. Anytime you have a minus and negative. Negative 2 minus 1 is going to be a negative 3, and 2 minus a negative means plus 3, which is 5. So your slope is negative 3 over 5. That's one part of what we need. That's the slope. So we have an m value. M equals negative 3 over 5. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of this stuff just to make us some room real quick. But you're using that slope formula to find your slope. Once you have a slope, you need the other part of it, which is the y-intercept. You can use either point that you want. You can use negative 3, 1, which we call point sub 1, or you can use 2, negative 2, which we call point sub 2. Just as a habit, I always use the first point just to where I always know which one to go back to. But now you're looking at your slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. You're going to plug in what you know in order to find what you don't know. So if this is our x value and this is our y value, we have our m value as well. Y's value is 1. So y, instead of y, we're going to substitute in 1. M's value, we just found it. M's value is going to be negative 3 over 5. X's value, we're going to use negative 3. And then b is the one, that's our y-intercept. That is the variable that we don't know the value of it. So this is what our equations are going to be in order for us to find what b is. Now that says negative 3 over 5. You can read that as negative 3 divided by 5, which means in order to undo divide by 5, you can multiply the entire equation or each term in the equation by 5. So if we multiply this by 5, this by 5, and the last term by 5, it'll get rid of that fraction which most of us don't like to work. 5 times 1 leaves us with 5. This 5 cancels out the division of 5, and it's just negative 3 times negative 3, which is a positive 9. And then 5 times b is plus 5b. Now we no longer have fractions in the problem. We'll get our fractions back in a second. Don't worry. Now undo addition and subtraction. You have 9 plus 5b, but the positive 9 tells you what to do with that 9. It says positive 9, which means plus 9. In order to undo that, you subtract it. If you subtract 9 on the right, you need to subtract 9 on the left. 5 minus 9 is going to be negative 4. 9 minus 9 cancels out, and then we still have 5b on the right. And then in order to get b by itself, that says 5 times b. Undo that, but that says multiply, so undo that by dividing by 5. Do the same thing on this side. These will cancel out and leave you with just b. And on the other side, it's negative 4 over 5. Notice I switched it around right here. I just put the b first, but it doesn't change the answer. B's value is negative 4 over 5. M's value is negative 3 over 5. So your equation is y equals, and I'm actually going to roll it down, put it at the bottom. Your equation is y equals, and then leave a space, x, and we're going to plug in our m value, which we have m's value at negative 3 over 5. we're going to plug it in place of m. So negative 3 over 5. And we're going to plug in our b value, which we just found is negative 4 over 5. We're going to plug that in right there. So that's like plus a negative 4 over 5, which is the same thing as minus 4 over 5. So your equation, the final answer for number 1, y equals negative 3 over 5x minus 4 over 5. We'll go through the exact same steps for this one. We'll try to do it a little bit quicker. 0 minus 3 over negative 4 minus 2. To find the slope, 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. Now this says negative 3 over negative 6, or negative 3 divided by negative 6. A negative divided by negative is a positive, and 3 goes into both of them. It goes into 3 one time and into 6 twice. So your slope for this equation is going to be a positive 1/2. You have negative, make sure you make a change. Now you have to pick one of your points to plug it into the slope-intercept form. Again, easier to use the first point to where you don't make a mistake. 3 equals, because y's value is 3, 1/2 times x value is 2 plus b. Put these two together, 1/2 of 2 is 1 plus b. And then get rid of that positive 1 by subtracting 1. 3 minus 1 is 2 equals b. So now you have an m value and you have a b value. Y equals, skip a space, and then x. Plug in your m value is 1/2. Y equals mx plus b. So 1/2 x. And your b value is a positive 2 plus 2. That one's a whole lot quicker than number 1. Or 1a, I should say. Number 2 says write the equation of line going through 2, negative 1 that's perpendicular to y equals 1/2 x plus 1. Now, if you look at the equation y equals 1/3 x plus 1, it's in mx plus b format. That's in your slope-intercept form. So this equation's slope is 1/3. So its slope is 1/3. Now that's not the equation that we're looking for. It doesn't say it's parallel. It tells us that that equation is perpendicular to the one that we're looking for. So in order for it to be perpendicular, you use the negative reciprocal of the slope. Remember, that's just a fancy phrase. Negative reciprocal is a fancy phrase. Means to flip it. That's reciprocal, means to flip it. Negative means to change it. Flip it and change it. So if it's positive, it becomes negative. If it's negative, it becomes positive. 1/3, the reciprocal means to flip it. It becomes 3/1. It's positive, so it becomes negative. So the new slope is -3. -3/1, the slope is the same thing as -3. So your new slope, or the one that's perpendicular, is going to be -3. Now you just work it exactly like we've been doing. You already have a slope. Find your b value by plugging into y equals mx plus b form. This is your x, this is your y value. So -1 equals our new m value we just found is -3 times our x value is 2 plus b to get us a b value. -3 times 2 is -6 plus b. And then get rid of -6 or -6 by adding 6 to both sides. These will cancel. -1 plus 6 is 5 equals b. So we have a b value and we have an m value. We can write our equation. Y equals mx plus b. So skip a space and then put an x. Bring your m value, which we found is -3. And plug it right there. And bring your b value, which we just found, as a positive 5. There's your new equation. Y equals -3x plus 5. And then number 3 says that show that ABC, or triangle ABC, is a right triangle. So we're trying to show that this is a right angle. In order for that to be a right angle, those two lines have to be perpendicular to each other. That's the connection for what we just did. So you need to find the slopes of line AC, and you need to find the slope of line CB. Simple as that. If they're negative reciprocals of each other, they'll be perpendicular. And if it's perpendicular, then it means it's a right triangle. So to find our slope of AC, we'll call this x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. Still the same formula for slope, the change of y over the change of x. So y sub 2, in that case, we have it listed as 4 minus y sub 1 is 2 over x sub 2 is 2 minus x sub 1 is a negative 2. Minus a negative means plus. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. So our slope is going to be 1/2 because the number 2 goes into both of those. So the slope of AC is 1/2. Our other one, and I'll go ahead and just erase this to where we don't get it confused. This will be x and y sub 1. We'll call this x and y sub 2. And we'll just run the formula again. Y sub 2 is negative 2 minus y sub 1 is 2 over x sub 2 is 0 minus x sub 1 is a negative 2. So negative 2 minus 2 is going to be negative 4 over 0 minus a negative 2 will be plus 2, which is 2. And negative 4 divided by positive 2 is going to be a negative 2. Okay, so we have to compare the two slopes. Can you take 1 over 2, that was the first one, can you flip it and negate it or make it a negative, and does it become the second slope? When you flip it, it becomes 2 over 1. It's positive, so it becomes negative. So this negative 2 over 1 is the same thing as negative 2. So that's how you show that, yes, it is a right triangle because they are perpendicular to each other. Remember, that symbol means perpendicular.